the Mel's Hole. In 1997, a man calling himself Mel Waters called into a late-night radio show and described something on his property in rural Washington state that would become one of the most enduring mysteries in American folklore. He claimed to have discovered a hole, a seemingly bottomless pit that defied every attempt to measure its depth and exhibited properties that violated the laws of physics. Waters said the hole had been on his property near Ellensburg for as long as anyone could remember. Local residents had used it as a dump for generations, throwing in garbage, dead animals, old appliances, anything they wanted to dispose of. The hole swallowed everything without complaint. No one had ever heard anything hit bottom. Curious about the depth, Waters claimed he began lowering fishing line into the hole with weights attached. He let out over 80,000 feet of line, more than 15 miles, without ever touching bottom. The line simply kept descending into darkness until he ran out of material to lower. But the depth wasn't the strangest thing about Mel's Hole. Waters described phenomena that seemed impossible. He claimed that when he lowered a dead dog into the hole, it came back up alive, returned by someone or something in the depths. He described a black beam of light that occasionally shot up from the hole, a darkness visible against the night sky. He spoke of government interest in the property, of men in suits who arrived with equipment to study the hole, of pressure to sell his land and leave. After Waters went public with his story, he disappeared. Some say he was relocated by government agencies who wanted to study the hole without interference. Others believe he was silenced. The property was reportedly purchased by the federal government, and the area surrounding the alleged hole was incorporated into the Yakima Military Training Center, making it inaccessible to civilian investigators. Researchers who have attempted to locate Mel's Hole have found nothing. No pit, no evidence of dumping, no geological anomaly. Skeptics dismiss the entire story as an elaborate hoax, a tall tale spun for entertainment on late-night radio. But the story persists because elements of it echo things that have been reported elsewhere. Deep holes that seem to have no bottom, strange properties exhibited by cavities in the earth, government interest in geological anomalies that don't fit known science. Whether Mel's Hole was real or imagined, it tapped into something that resonates. The sense that beneath our feet, there might be depths we're not meant to explore. If Mel Waters was telling the truth, his hole led somewhere, a place deep enough to swallow 15 miles of fishing line, strange enough to return the dead to life, important enough for the government to seize the land and seal it away. Where that place is, and what exists there, remains unknown. The Cave of the Tayos. In 1976, the government of Ecuador authorized an expedition that would become one of the most controversial in archaeological history. The target was the Cueva de los Tayos, the Cave of the Oil Birds, a vast cavern system in the Amazon jungle that, according to local legend, led to something that shouldn't exist, an underground library containing metal books inscribed by an ancient civilization. The expedition was remarkable not just for its objective, but for its participants. Neil Armstrong, the first human to walk on the moon, served as the honorary leader of the team. British and Ecuadorian military personnel provided support. Scientists from multiple disciplines joined the descent into a cave system that indigenous Shuar people had considered sacred and dangerous for generations. The expedition was prompted by claims made by Erich von Daniken and Hungarian-Argentine explorer Janos Juan Moric. Moric claimed to have discovered, in 1969, a vast underground complex within the cave system, chambers carved with geometric precision, containing artifacts that included gold objects, stone sculptures, and a library of metal tablets inscribed with unknown symbols. He believed these artifacts were evidence of a lost civilization, possibly connected to ancient visitors from elsewhere. The 1976 expedition descended into the cave system and explored chambers that did indeed show signs of artificial modification. They found walls that appeared too smooth and regular to be natural formations. They discovered what seemed to be deliberately carved rooms and passages. They documented artifacts that remain unexplained, but they did not find the metal library, or rather, they reported that they did not find it. What happened during the expedition remains disputed. Some participants later claimed that significant discoveries were made but suppressed. Others insisted that Moric's claims were exaggerated or fabricated. The Ecuadorian government has restricted access to portions of the cave system, citing both safety concerns and cultural protection for the Shuar people. The Cave of the Tayos extends for miles beneath the jungle, and only a fraction has been explored. The deepest chambers require technical climbing skills and equipment to reach. Whatever the 1976 expedition found or didn't find, vast portions of the cave system remain unmapped and unstudied. The Shuar continue to protect the cave and its secrets. They speak of their ancestors receiving knowledge from beings who emerged from the earth in ancient times. They describe chambers deep within the mountain that contain objects left by those beings, objects that must remain hidden until the world is ready to receive them. The cave leads somewhere. Expeditions have confirmed chambers and passages extending far beyond what has been mapped. What waits at the end of those passages, whether metal library, ancient artifacts, or simply more stone, remains one of archaeology's most tantalizing mysteries. Movile Cave. In 1986, workers testing the ground for a potential power plant site near Mangalia, Romania, broke through into something that shouldn't exist. A cave system that had been completely sealed from the outside world for approximately 5.5 million years. What they found inside would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about life on Earth. Movile Cave is small by cave standards, just a few hundred meters of passages, but its isolation makes it one of the most scientifically significant places on the planet. For millions of years, no light, no surface water, and almost no fresh air had penetrated its depths. The atmosphere inside contains barely any oxygen and is rich in hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, conditions that should be completely hostile to life. Instead, scientists found a thriving ecosystem. More than 50 species have been identified in Movile Cave, and at least 35 of them exist nowhere else on Earth. There are spiders, leeches, water scorpions, and various invertebrates that have evolved in complete darkness for millions of years. They are pale, eyeless, and utterly alien, creatures that look like they belong on another planet rather than beneath the Romanian countryside. What makes Movile Cave truly remarkable is what sustains this life. On the surface, almost all ecosystems depend ultimately on sunlight. Plants convert solar energy into food through photosynthesis, and everything else eats the plants or eats something that ate the plants. But in Movile Cave, there is no sunlight. There has been no sunlight for 5.5 million years. Instead, the ecosystem runs on chemosynthesis. Bacteria derive energy from chemical reactions involving hydrogen sulfide and other compounds, forming a food chain completely independent of the sun. It's the same process that sustains life around deep-sea hydrothermal vents, but those vents were discovered in the 1970s. Movile Cave proved that such ecosystems could exist on land, sealed away in pockets of alien environment scattered beneath the surface. Access to Movile Cave is extremely restricted. Only about 100 people have ever entered, and researchers must pass through multiple airlocks to prevent contamination of the cave's unique atmosphere. The Romanian government treats the site as a scientific treasure requiring the highest level of protection. The creatures in Movile Cave evolved in isolation, adapting to conditions that would kill surface life. They represent a separate trajectory of evolution, diverging from their surface relatives millions of years ago. They are, in a very real sense, aliens. Life forms that developed according to different rules in a different world. And Movile Cave raises a haunting question. If one sealed ecosystem can survive for 5.5 million years beneath Romania, how many others might exist elsewhere? How many isolated worlds with their own unique life forms might be waiting beneath the surface of our planet? The cave leads to a place that shouldn't exist, and it's right here on Earth. Doong Cave. In 1991, a Vietnamese farmer named Ho Con was searching for food in the jungle of Phong Nha Ke Bang when he discovered an opening in a cliff face. When he approached, he felt cold wind rushing from the darkness and heard the sound of a river echoing from somewhere deep below. He marked the location in his memory, but didn't enter. The local jungle was dangerous enough without descending into the unknown. It took nearly 2 decades for Con to relocate the entrance. In 2009, he guided a British-Vietnamese expedition team back to the cliff face. What they found inside would be recognized as the largest cave passage in the world, a place so vast, so self-contained, and so alien that it defied easy description. Doong Cave, the name means mountain river cave, contains passages large enough to house entire city blocks. The main chamber stretches more than 3 miles long, 650 feet wide, and 500 feet tall. A 747 aircraft could fly through it without touching the walls or ceiling, but the size is only the beginning of what makes Doong impossible. The cave has its own weather. Clouds form inside the largest chambers, drifting through caverns that have their own climate systems. Temperature differentials between sections create wind and precipitation. Explorers have reported fog, mist, and what appears to be indoor rain falling from the cave ceiling hundreds of feet above. Even more remarkable are the cave's gardens, places where the ceiling has collapsed, creating massive skylights called dolines. Sunlight streams through these openings, illuminating patches of jungle that have grown inside the cave. Full-size trees reach toward the distant light. Plants and animals that exist nowhere else have evolved in these isolated pockets. The cave contains its own forests, fed by its own weather, existing in a world that has almost no contact with the surface. The expedition team discovered entire ecosystems that had developed in isolation. They found new species of fish in the underground river. They documented birds and monkeys living in the doline jungles, cut off from the outside world by walls of stone. They walked through chambers so large that their headlamps couldn't reach the ceiling or far wall, spaces where darkness itself seemed to have physical weight. Since its discovery, Doong has been open to limited tourism, but access remains strictly controlled. Only a few hundred permits are issued each year, and visitors must be accompanied by authorized guides. The Vietnamese government has resisted proposals to install cable cars or other infrastructure that might damage the cave's pristine environment. What makes Doong philosophically unsettling is its completeness. This isn't a cave in the conventional sense, a hole in the ground that leads to dead ends. It's a world. A world with its own sky, the cave ceiling, its own weather, its own forests, its own species. A world that existed for millions of years without any awareness of the surface world above it. The cave leads to a place that shouldn't exist, an underground realm so large and so complete that it functions as its own planet within a planet, and explorers have only mapped a fraction of the Phong Nha Ke Bong cave system. Doong may connect to other chambers, other worlds, still waiting to be discovered in the darkness. The Cave of Crystals. In the year 2000, miners drilling beneath the Naka Mountain in Chihuahua, Mexico, broke through into a chamber that resembled nothing on Earth. What they found 1,000 feet below the surface looked like a scene from science fiction. A cathedral-sized cavern filled with the largest crystals ever discovered, crystalline pillars that dwarfed the humans who stood among them. The Cave of Crystals contains selenite formations reaching 36 feet long and weighing up to 55 tons. They crisscross the chamber at impossible angles, translucent beams of crystallized gypsum that took approximately 500,000 years to grow in the superheated groundwater that once filled the cave. Nothing like them exists anywhere else on the planet, but the crystals, as astonishing as they are, aren't the only reason the cave shouldn't exist. The conditions inside are so extreme that humans can barely survive there. Air temperatures reach 136 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity approaches 100%. Without specialized cooling suits and breathing equipment, a person would lose consciousness within minutes and die shortly after. The human body simply cannot regulate temperature in that environment. The cave is effectively an alien world that happens to exist beneath Mexico. Scientists who have entered describe an experience that transcends normal exploration. The crystals glow with reflected light. The scale defies human perception. Standing among formations that dwarf redwood trees, in an environment that actively tries to kill you, produces a cognitive dissonance that some researchers have compared to religious experience. What allowed these crystals to grow so large was the cave's unique geological position. Magma chambers beneath Naka heat groundwater to extreme temperatures and saturate it with minerals. For 500,000 years, that superheated water filled the cave, and the crystals grew slowly, molecule by molecule, reaching sizes impossible under normal conditions. When the mining company pumped out the water to access ore bodies, they accidentally drained the cave and stopped the crystal growth that had continued for millennia. The mining company kept the cave's existence relatively quiet at first, but word spread through scientific communities. Researchers from around the world requested access. Studies revealed that the crystals contained something unexpected. Dormant microbes trapped in fluid inclusions within the crystal structure that appeared to be up to 50,000 years old. When scientists extracted and revived these organisms, they came back to life, ancient life forms preserved inside giant crystals in a superheated underworld. In 2015, the mine's owners stopped pumping groundwater from the lower levels, and the Cave of Crystals began flooding again. The water has likely reclaimed much of the chamber by now, and the crystals have resumed their impossibly slow growth. In another 500,000 years, they may be larger still. The cave leads to a place that shouldn't exist, a realm of giant crystals, extreme temperatures, and resurrected microbes that challenges our understanding of what's possible beneath the Earth's surface. And it's been locked away again, sealed beneath rising water, accessible only to whatever life forms can survive in its alien environment. The Mount Shasta Caverns. Mount Shasta rises over 14,000 feet in Northern California, a volcanic peak that has attracted spiritual seekers and mystics for generations. But beneath the mountain, according to persistent legend, lies something far stranger than the surface, an underground realm inhabited by an advanced civilization that has existed there for thousands of years. The legends began with the indigenous peoples of the region, who spoke of spirit beings living inside the mountain. But they took a strange turn in the 1880s when a teenager named Frederick Spencer Oliver claimed to have encountered these beings while hiking on the mountain. He described being led into underground chambers where he met the Lemurians, survivors of a lost continent who had established an advanced civilization inside Mount Shasta. Oliver's account, published as A Dweller on Two Planets, described a vast underground city with sophisticated technology, including devices for transmitting energy and vehicles that traveled through tunnels beneath the mountain. He claimed the Lemurians had preserved their civilization underground, while the surface world evolved through its own cycles of progress and destruction. The story might have been dismissed as pure fiction if not for the reports that followed. Throughout the early 20th century, numerous people claimed encounters with strange beings near Mount Shasta. Witnesses described tall figures with unusual features, dressed in white robes, who appeared briefly and then vanished, sometimes apparently walking into solid rock. In 1931, a man named Guy Ballard claimed extensive contact with beings inside the mountain. His descriptions were remarkably consistent with Oliver's from decades earlier. Underground chambers, advanced technology, a civilization that had preserved itself while Lemuria sank beneath the Pacific. Ballard's accounts became the foundation of a spiritual movement that still exists today. Geologists confirm that Mount Shasta contains extensive lava tubes and cave systems, products of its volcanic history. Some of these caves extend deep into the mountain. Not all have been mapped. The U.S. Forest Service has documented cave entrances that have never been fully explored. In the 1970s, a researcher named William Hamilton claimed to have interviewed people who had entered extensive cave systems beneath Mount Shasta and encountered evidence of underground construction, smooth walls, geometric passages, chambers that couldn't have formed naturally. His witnesses described feeling watched, hearing sounds that seemed mechanical, and in one case, encountering a door that blocked further progress. None of these accounts have been verified. Skeptics dismiss them as fantasy, hoax, or misinterpretation of natural phenomena. The caves that have been officially explored contain no evidence of underground civilizations, but the legends persist because something about Mount Shasta generates them. The cave systems are real, if incompletely mapped. The reports span more than a century and come from seemingly independent witnesses. The indigenous peoples who lived in the mountain's shadow for thousands of years believed something inhabited its depths. The caves of Mount Shasta may lead nowhere unusual, or they may lead to places that our scientific paradigm is unable to acknowledge. The mountain keeps its secrets. Derinkuyu. In 1963, a man in the Cappadocia region of Turkey was renovating his home when he discovered that the wall of his basement concealed a passageway, When he broke through, he found himself looking into a room that shouldn't exist, the entrance to an underground city that extended at least 18 levels beneath the surface and could shelter approximately 20,000 people. Derinkuyu is the deepest of Cappadocia's underground cities, extending more than 280 feet below ground. But depth alone doesn't capture what makes this place impossible. The city contains everything needed for extended underground habitation: living quarters, kitchens, storage rooms, wine and oil presses, stables for livestock, schools, chapels, and ventilation shafts that still function after centuries. Massive stone doors, weighing hundreds of pounds, could be rolled into place to seal sections of the city from invasion. The construction is staggering in scale and sophistication. Workers carved approximately 4 million cubic feet of stone from volcanic rock. Without modern tools, without powered equipment, without any of the technology we consider necessary for such projects, they created a city with fresh water, air circulation, and the capacity to sustain thousands of people for extended periods, entirely underground. Who built Derinkuyu and why? The conventional explanation points to early Christians fleeing persecution, using the caves as hideouts during periods of danger. This explains some of the construction, the chapels, the defensive features, but doesn't fully account for the scale and complexity. You don't carve an 18-level underground metropolis as a temporary hideout. Some researchers believe the deepest levels predate Christianity by thousands of years. The Phrygians, who inhabited the region around 1200 BCE, may have begun the excavation. Others argue that the original construction goes back even further, to peoples whose names history has forgotten. The technology required to carve these chambers, to plan the ventilation, to engineer the defense systems, to create a functional underground society, implies sophisticated knowledge that doesn't fit neatly into accepted historical timelines. Derinkuyu is connected to other underground cities by tunnels, some of which extend for miles. The full extent of the underground network remains unmapped. New chambers and passages are still being discovered. What has been explored represents only a fraction of what may exist beneath Cappadocia. The city functioned as a complete society. Babies were born there. People died there. Generations lived their entire lives underground, emerging to farm the surface when conditions permitted, and retreating to the depths when danger threatened. It was not a cave system that humans adapted to. It was a civilization that humans built underground, on a scale that still defies explanation. Modern visitors walk through Derinkuyu's upper levels and feel the weight of stone above them, the darkness beyond their lights, the knowledge that this place extends far deeper than they can reach. The city leads to places that official tours don't visit, lower levels that remain closed, passages that haven't been secured, chambers that might contain answers to questions about who built this place and what they were hiding from. The Siberian Gateway. In the remote Sakha Republic of Siberia, the indigenous Yakut people have long spoken of a forbidden valley they call the Valley of Death. According to their legends, metal structures emerge from the earth there, domes and archways that glow at night, that make people sick if they stay too long, that seem to have been there since before human memory. The legends also speak of openings in the earth that lead to places beneath the permafrost, places where those who enter do not return. Western scientists dismissed these stories as mythology until a series of massive craters began appearing in Siberia in 2014. The first crater, discovered on the Yamal Peninsula, measured over 200 feet wide, a near-perfect cylinder punched into the earth as if by an enormous drill. More craters followed. Some were even larger. Scientists struggled to explain how they formed. The current consensus attributes the craters to methane explosions, pockets of gas released by thawing permafrost that build pressure until they blast through the surface. This explains the physics but raises its own questions. What created the methane pockets? How deep do they extend? And what exists in the cavities left behind? Expeditions have descended into several of the craters and found extensive cave systems beneath them. The walls show signs of extreme heat from the explosions that formed them. The ice that lines the passages is unstable and constantly shifting. The depths remain largely unexplored because the conditions are too dangerous for extended investigation. But the craters aren't the only underground anomalies in the region. Researchers investigating the Yakut legends of the Valley of Death have found unusual magnetic readings, areas where compasses malfunction, and what appear to be artificial structures beneath the snow and permafrost. One expedition in the 1990s claimed to have found metallic debris that couldn't be explained as natural formations or Soviet-era wreckage. The permafrost of Siberia is thawing faster than anywhere else on Earth. As it melts, it reveals things that have been frozen for thousands of years: mammoth carcasses, ancient artifacts, structures that shouldn't exist. Some indigenous communities have reported finding cave entrances that were previously sealed by ice, openings to underground spaces that had been inaccessible for millennia. What lies beneath the Siberian permafrost remains largely unknown. The region is vast, remote, and dangerous. Exploration is limited to brief summer windows when conditions are marginally survivable. The caves and craters that have been discovered hint at an underground landscape far more complex than the frozen surface suggests. The Yakut legends speak of gateways to the underworld, of places where the living should not go. The scientists who study the craters speak of methane cavities and geological anomalies. Perhaps they're describing the same thing in different languages. Perhaps beneath Siberia, there are places that neither indigenous legend nor modern science has fully explained, caves that lead to realms that shouldn't exist, preserved by cold and waiting to be revealed. Dean's Blue Hole. Blue holes are underwater sinkholes, vertical caves that plunge into the earth from the seafloor, their depths hidden beneath water so clear it appears blue from above. They exist throughout the Caribbean and the Pacific, geological anomalies that formed during ice ages when sea levels were lower, and freshwater dissolved the limestone that now lies underwater. Most extend a few hundred feet. Dean's Blue Hole, in the Bahamas, extends 663 feet straight down, the deepest known underwater sinkhole in the world. What makes Dean's Blue Hole impossible isn't just its depth, it's what lies at the bottom. Divers who have descended to the deepest levels report finding horizontal passages leading away from the main shaft, tunnels that disappear into darkness in multiple directions. The cave doesn't simply end at the bottom. It continues, extending into unexplored territory that no human has ever mapped. The depth alone makes Dean's Blue Hole dangerous. Below about 100 feet, nitrogen narcosis begins affecting divers, a disorientation similar to drunkenness that impairs judgment. Below 200 feet, the pressure requires specialized gas mixtures that carry their own risks. Below 400 feet, only the most experienced technical divers can survive, and then only briefly. The bottom of Dean's Blue Hole is accessible to a tiny handful of people on the planet, and the passages leading away from it are accessible to no one. In 2010, freediver William Trubridge set a world record by descending to 331 feet in Dean's Blue Hole without any breathing equipment, holding his breath as he plunged into darkness, then ascending before his body failed. His description of the experience is haunting, the light fading to nothing, the pressure crushing his lungs, the sense of being in a place that humans were never meant to reach. But the deepest explorations have been conducted by mixed gas divers using rebreather technology. They have briefly reached the bottom and confirmed the presence of horizontal passages. They have seen openings that lead somewhere that would require equipment and techniques that don't currently exist to explore. The passages might extend a few feet. They might extend for miles. No one knows. Geologists theorize that these passages were carved by freshwater during ice ages, when the Blue Hole was a dry cave open to the air. If that's true, the horizontal tunnels might lead to extensive underground systems, caves that have been flooded and inaccessible for thousands of years, preserved in their ancient state beneath the Bahamian seafloor. What creatures live in those depths? What fossils might they contain? What secrets might be preserved in tunnels that have been sealed from the world since the last ice age? The questions are unanswerable because the place they lead to is unreachable. Dean's Blue Hole descends to the edge of human capability and then continues into darkness that no technology can yet penetrate. The cave leads somewhere. We know that horizontal passages extend from the bottom. We just can't follow them. They lead to places that might as well not exist, because for all practical purposes, they don't exist for us. The entrance to Xibalba. In the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, the ancient Maya built a civilization that mapped the heavens, invented mathematical concepts, and constructed cities that rivaled any in the ancient world. They also believed that beneath the earth lay another realm, Xibalba, the place of fear, the underworld where the dead journeyed and the gods of death held court. According to Maya legend, Xibalba was not a metaphor. It was a physical place, and caves were the entrances. Modern archaeologists have discovered that the Maya weren't speaking entirely in myth. Beneath the Yucatan lies one of the most extensive underwater cave systems on Earth, a labyrinth of flooded passages called cenotes that extends for hundreds of miles through the limestone bedrock. These caves contain artifacts, human remains, and evidence of rituals conducted in darkness for over 1,000 years. The Maya entered these caves believing they were visiting the underworld. What they found inside may have confirmed their beliefs. The cave system beneath the ancient Maya city of Mayapan contains chambers that archaeologists have called impossible. One cave extends for miles, with passages that should not exist according to known geological processes. The formations inside include structures that appear artificial, too regular, too geometric, too precisely placed to be natural. Maya artifacts are scattered throughout, evidence of extensive use that continued for centuries. But the most significant discovery came in 2018, when divers exploring the Sak Aktun system, the longest underwater cave system in the world, stretching over 215 miles, found human remains and artifacts in chambers more than 100 feet below the water table. The remains dated to the end of the last ice age, more than 10,000 years ago, long before the caves flooded, long before the Maya civilization emerged. Someone had been in those caves at the dawn of human presence in the Americas, conducting activities in chambers that have been underwater for millennia. What were they doing there? The caves contain evidence of fire use, tool manufacture, and burial practices. They contain the bones of extinct animals, giant sloths, elephant-like gomphotheres, alongside human remains. They contain artifacts that predate the Maya by thousands of years, suggesting continuous use of the cave system across multiple civilizations. The Maya believed these caves led to Xibalba, and they may have been right in a sense. The caves lead to a place that preserves evidence of peoples and practices that history has forgotten. They lead to chambers where prehistoric humans encountered animals that have been extinct for 10,000 years. They lead to an underworld that is all too real, a world beneath the jungle where the dead of multiple civilizations lie waiting in flooded darkness. The exploration of the Sauk Acton system continues, and each expedition finds new passages, new chambers, new evidence of the impossible. The caves extend further than anyone has mapped. They connect to other systems that haven't been explored. They lead to places that the Maya called Xibalba, and that modern science is only beginning to understand. These 10 caves share a common quality. They lead to places that challenge our understanding of what's possible. Underground ecosystems sealed for millions of years. Cities carved 18 levels deep into volcanic rock. Chambers containing crystals larger than trees. Passages that extend beyond the reach of human exploration, into darkness that keeps its secrets. We like to believe we've mapped the world. Satellites photograph every inch of the surface. GPS can locate us anywhere on the planet. The age of exploration, we tell ourselves, ended long ago. But these caves remind us that vast territories remain unexplored, not across oceans or on distant continents, but directly beneath our feet. The surface is thin. Below it lies a realm we've barely begun to understand. How many cave systems remain undiscovered? How many sealed ecosystems have evolved in isolation for millions of years? How many underground chambers contain evidence of civilizations, technologies, or capabilities that don't fit our historical narratives? The people who discovered these caves often struggled to be believed. Mel Waters was dismissed as a hoaxer. The Cave of the Tayos expedition was mocked for seeking a metal library. The legends of Mount Shasta are treated as New Age fantasy. Our scientific paradigm has difficulty accepting phenomena that violate its expectations, even when the phenomena are documented, witnessed, and physically present. But the caves themselves don't care what we believe. Movile Cave contains life forms that evolved without sunlight for 5.5 million years, whether we accept it or not. Sun Doong has its own weather systems, regardless of how impossible that seems. The passages at the bottom of Dean's Blue Hole extend into unexplored territory that awaits whoever can finally reach it. What else waits to be discovered? The Yucatan Caves have yielded evidence of human activity during the last ice age, 10,000 years ago. The Siberian permafrost is thawing to reveal underground spaces that have been sealed for millennia. New cave systems are found every year, and many of them lead to chambers that the discoverers describe as impossible, too large, too deep, too strange, too different from what geology predicts. The caves in this video led to places that shouldn't exist. Some led to underground worlds with their own ecosystems and weather. Others led to evidence of civilizations and activities that don't fit accepted history. Still others led to depths and passages that remain unexplored because we lack the technology to follow them. But perhaps the most unsettling possibility is this: the caves we've found may be just the beginning. Beneath the surface of our supposedly mapped and measured planet, there may be realms, civilizations, ecosystems, and phenomena that we haven't discovered yet. Places that shouldn't exist, waiting in darkness for someone to find the entrance. The Earth is hollow with caves. Every continent contains them. Most have never been fully explored. Some have never been entered at all. Where do they lead? We don't know. We can't know until we follow them into the dark. And sometimes, the people who do that don't come back with answers. Sometimes they don't come back at all.